5 years after the great battle that shattered the Council's power, Admiral Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the construction of Harmony Station in the neutral zone between former Council space and the liberated worlds. The massive structure would serve as headquarters for the new Galactic Cooperation Initiative, a voluntary alliance of species dedicated to peaceful exploration and mutual defense. The transformation of the galaxy had been remarkable. Where once the Council's rigid hierarchy had controlled every aspect of interstellar civilization, now dozens of species worked together as equals. Trade flowed freely between worlds, scientific knowledge was shared openly, and conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than force. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Veltar delegation," reported Commander Mike Chen, her communications officer. "They're requesting permission to join the initiative." Lisa smiled at the irony. The Veltar had been among the Council's most loyal members, but their recent civil war had ended with moderates taking control of their government. Now they wanted to join the alliance they had once sought to destroy. "Grant them permission to—" "Doc," Lisa ordered. "Everyone deserves a chance to prove they've changed." The Galactic Cooperation Initiative had been President Helen Carter's vision, implemented through the patient work of diplomats like Sarah Mitchell and former enemies like Ambassador Zethkar, who had become one of humanity's most trusted allies. After witnessing the devastation of the old system, Dr. Amanda Foster's research centers had become beacons of cooperative. Supreme Fleet Commander Ajatar stood before the assembled Council of 12, his scaled features betraying none of the concern he felt inside. The holographic displays around the chamber showed the impossible truth. A primitive species had defeated Council forces not once, but 3 times. The latest defeat at Kepler 442 had been broadcast across the galaxy, inspiring unrest on dozens of worlds. "The humans must be eliminated completely," declared Councillor Velthon of the Asterian Empire. "Their defiance threatens the stability we have maintained for millennia." Ajatar activated the tactical display showing the full might of the Council. "Fleet. I have assembled 10,000 ships from all member civilizations. This represents the largest military force in galactic history." The numbers were staggering. Battleships that could crack planets, carriers that launched swarms of fighters, and support vessels equipped with weapons that had pacified entire star systems. No species had ever faced such overwhelming force and survived. But even as the Council prepared their final solution, humanity had been busy preparing surprises of their own. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the New Earth Defense Headquarters, a massive facility built deep inside an asteroid in the outer solar system. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from all sectors," Captain Lisa Hayes announced. "The Council is mobilizing everything they have." Jake studied the intelligence reports streaming in from human reconnaissance ships throughout the galaxy. The scale of the approaching fleet was beyond anything they had imagined, but humanity's response would be equally unprecedented. "Activate Operation Wildfire," Jake ordered. "It's time to show the galaxy what we've really been building." Throughout human space, previously hidden facilities came online. Entire asteroid belts revealed themselves to be massive weapons platforms. Civilian ships shed their disguises to become warships. Mining stations deployed defensive systems that had been secretly installed over months of preparation. But humanity's greatest secret was something the Council had never expected. Captain Danny Rodriguez and diplomat Sarah Mitchell had spent the past year conducting covert negotiations with other species throughout the galaxy. They had discovered that humanity was not the first to resist Council rule, just the first to survive the initial confrontation. Captain Rodriguez to Admiral Morrison, came the transmission from deep space. Operation Alliance is ready to commence. We have 17 species standing by to join the fight. This was the moment that would change everything. Hidden throughout the galaxy, other species had been watching humanity's rebellion with growing hope. The Kethmori survivors, who had been living in secret since their world's destruction, had been building ships and weapons while waiting for someone to challenge the Council. The Zephyrian rebels had been conducting guerrilla operations for decades, never able to mount a serious challenge until now. General Marcus Stone coordinated the defense from his command ship, the Indomitable, positioned at the edge of human space. His tactical display showed Council forces approaching from 12 different vectors, exactly as expected. "All units, remember your training?" Stone broadcast to the human fleet. "They expect us to meet them head-on in a conventional battle. We're going to give them something completely different." Dr. Amanda Foster watched from her research vessel as the first phase of the Human Defense Plan activated. Self-replicating. Defensive drones, her latest creation, began emerging from hidden positions throughout the outer solar system. These weren't ordinary weapons platforms, but intelligent systems that could adapt and coordinate without central command. The Council. Fleet approached Earth expecting to find a desperate last stand by a cornered species. Instead, they found empty space and silence. "Where are the human forces?" demanded Supreme Commander Ajtar as his sensors swept the system. Intelligence reports indicated massive defensive preparations. His science officer was frantically scanning all frequencies. "Sir, I'm not detecting any significant human military presence. A few scattered ships, minimal defensive platforms, nothing that could threaten our fleet." This was exactly what humanity wanted them to think. The real human fleet was hidden throughout the asteroid belt, their ships disguised as space debris, and running completely silent. But more importantly, similar fleets were positioned near every major Council world, waiting for the signal to begin simultaneous attacks. Admiral Beth Morgan commanded the largest human task force, positioned near the Council's primary military base in the core systems. Her ships had been in position for weeks, studying Council defensive patterns and preparing for coordinated strikes. "Admiral Morrison to all Allied forces," came the transmission that started the largest space battle in galactic history. "Operation Wildfire is now active. All units, you are authorized to engage." Across the galaxy, human and alien ships emerged from hiding to strike at Council forces simultaneously. The Council had concentrated their fleet for the attack on Earth, leaving their own worlds vulnerable to the coordinated assault. Supreme Commander Ajtar watched in horror as reports flooded in from across Council space. Human ships were attacking military bases, supply depots, and command centers throughout the galaxy. But they weren't alone. Species that the Council thought had been pacified decades ago were rising in rebellion, using human tactics and weapons. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from all 12 home systems," his communications officer reported. "The attacks are coordinated and using unknown weapon types." But the greatest shock came when the Earth system itself revealed its defenses. What had seemed like empty space suddenly filled with ships as the human fleet decloaked simultaneously. Thousands of vessels, from converted freighters to purpose-built warships, surrounded the Council fleet. Captain Alex Turner led the first wave of human attackers, his squadron using the same swarming tactics that had proven effective at Kepler 442. The Council ships, designed for long-range engagements between opposing battle lines, were unprepared for the chaotic, close-range combat that humanity preferred. Dr. Foster's quantum weapons proved even more devastating than expected. Council ships that had survived battles against conventional forces for thousands of years found their shields useless and their armor penetrated by weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics as they understood them. The self-replicating drones added another dimension to the battle. They moved independently, coordinating attacks and adapting to Council tactics in real time. When Council forces destroyed one wave of drones, another wave appeared with modifications designed to counter their defensive measures. Captain Megan Clark commanded a squadron of human ships that had been equipped with dimensional manipulation technology. They could appear and disappear at will, striking from impossible angles before vanishing again. To the Council forces, it seemed like the humans could teleport their ships anywhere in the battle space. Supreme Commander Ajatar tried to maintain fleet coordination as his forces were torn apart by attacks from every direction. The humans fought with a combination of advanced technology and primitive savagery that his tactical training had never prepared him for. "All ships, withdraw to defensive formation," he ordered. But his fleet was already scattered and demoralized. Ships that had never known defeat were abandoning their positions and fleeing from human attackers. The battle raged for hours as human and allied forces demonstrated the effectiveness of asymmetric warfare on a galactic scale. Council ships designed to fight other Council ships were helpless against enemies that ignored conventional tactics and used weapons that shouldn't have existed. When the firing finally stopped, Supreme Commander Ajatar found himself commanding the remnants of what had once been the galaxy's most powerful fleet. More than half his ships were destroyed or disabled, and the survivors were scattered throughout the system. Admiral Morrison opened a communication channel to the Council flagship. "Supreme Commander, this is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Force. Your fleet is defeated and your authority is broken. The galaxy belongs to all species now, not just the Council." Ajatar stared at the human admiral, struggling to comprehend what had happened. In a single day, 50,000. Years of Council dominance had been shattered by species they had dismissed as primitive. "This is impossible," Ajatar said. "No species has ever successfully challenged Council authority." Morrison smiled. "That's because no one ever taught them that authority has to be earned, not just claimed. The Council ruled through fear and overwhelming force. But when someone stands up to a bully and wins, others find the courage to stand up too." As if to prove his point, transmissions began flooding in from across the galaxy. Species after species was declaring independence from Council rule, inspired by humanity's example and supported by human military advisors and weapons technology. The age of Council dominance was over, and a new era of galactic cooperation was about to begin. Commander Vextal stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical display that showed the Kepler 442 system ahead. The Council had sent him with 50 ships to teach humanity a lesson they would never forget. After the embarrassing defeat of a Council patrol by a single human vessel, the leadership demanded decisive action. "Commander, we're detecting minimal activity in the system," reported his sensor operator. "One small colony on the second planet, maybe 10,000 inhabitants, a few orbital platforms, and what looks like civilian shipping." Vextal nodded with satisfaction. This would be simple. Overwhelming force against a lightly defended target would demonstrate to humanity and the rest of the galaxy what happened when someone defied the Council's authority. What Vextal didn't know was that Colonel Sam Peters and Major Nicole Wright had spent months preparing for exactly this scenario. The Kepler 442 system had been chosen specifically because its asteroid belt and harsh planetary conditions provided perfect cover for defensive preparations. "Colonel, Council forces are entering the outer system," reported Captain Luke Thompson from his position inside a hollowed-out asteroid. His ship, the Wolverine, was one of 30 vessels hidden throughout the asteroid belt, their hulls blackened and running completely silent. Sam Peters studied the tactical display from the command bunker deep beneath the colony's surface. The Sabwa Council fleet was approaching in perfect formation, following standard doctrine that emphasized overwhelming firepower delivered in coordinated salvos. "They're doing exactly what we expected," Sam said to Nicole, who was coordinating the orbital defenses. "Standard approach, standard formation, standard tactics." Nicole smiled grimly. "Good. That means Dr. Foster's predictions about their behavior were correct." The Council fleet moved steadily toward the inner system, confident in their superiority. Vextal had read the reports about human military capabilities, and they seemed primitive compared to Council technology. These humans used chemical rockets and kinetic weapons, technologies that the Council had abandoned thousands of years ago. "Commander, we're in optimal firing range," his weapons officer reported. "Shall we begin the bombardment?" Vextal was about to give the order when his sensor operator called out in alarm. "Sir, I'm detecting energy signatures throughout the asteroid belt. Multiple contacts moving to intercept us." The Council commander stared in disbelief as dozens of human ships suddenly appeared on his screens, emerging from concealment among the asteroids. But these weren't the crude vessels his intelligence reports had described. These ships moved with purpose and coordination, using flight patterns unlike anything in Council tactical doctrine. Captain Megan Clark commanded the first wave of attackers. Her ship, the Hellhound, led a squadron of modified destroyers in a coordinated strike against the Council formation's flank. Instead of the long-range energy exchanges that characterized galactic warfare, the humans closed to point-blank range before unleashing their weapons. Dr. Foster's quantum disruption technology proved devastatingly effective. The Council's energy shields, designed to deflect conventional weapons, simply collapsed when hit by the quantum disruptors. Council ships that had seemed invulnerable suddenly found themselves defenseless against human kinetic weapons. "What kind of weapons are those?" Vextal demanded as his fleet's shields failed one after another. His science officer was frantically analyzing the human attacks. "Unknown technology, Commander. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases." This was exactly what humanity had counted on. The Council's databases contained information about every known galactic civilization, but they had all developed along similar technological paths. Humanity's unique approach to physics and engineering had produced weapons and tactics that the Council had never encountered. Captain Danny Rodriguez brought his squadron in from above the Council formation, using the same three-dimensional thinking that had confused alien observers since humanity's first space battles. While the Council ships maneuvered in the flat plane that most species considered natural for space combat, the humans attacked from every possible angle. The battle quickly turned into something unprecedented in galactic warfare. Instead of the orderly exchange of fire between opposing battle lines, the human attacks resembled a swarm of angry insects surrounding much larger prey. Council ships found themselves isolated and overwhelmed by multiple attackers using weapons and tactics their training had never prepared them for. Major Wright coordinated the orbital defenses as the battle raged above. Hidden weapons platforms throughout the system came online, adding their firepower to the human fleet's attacks. But these weren't conventional weapon platforms. Using principles adapted from human submarine warfare, They appeared, fired, and disappeared before the Council forces could respond. "Colonel, the Council flagship is trying to withdraw," reported Lieutenant Alex Turner from his position monitoring Council communications. "Their commander is calling for reinforcements." Sam Peters made a decision that would echo throughout the galaxy. "All units, this is Prometheus Base. We're not letting them retreat to bring back a bigger fleet. Take them all down." The human ships pressed their attack with renewed intensity. Captain Thompson's Wolverine rammed a Council cruiser, using the ship's reinforced hull to devastating effect. Captain Clark's squadron coordinated a pincer movement that trapped 3 Council vessels in a crossfire they couldn't escape. Commander Vextal watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by forces he had expected to sweep aside without effort. The humans fought with a ferocity and unpredictability that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They used ramming attacks, proximity mines hidden in debris, and coordinated swarm tactics that overwhelmed his ship's defensive capabilities. "Sir, we've lost 37 ships," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "The humans are using weapons that ignore our shields and tactics we've never seen before." Vextal's flagship shuddered under the impact of human weapons. His shields were failing, his engines were damaged, and escape seemed impossible. Around him, the pride of the Council fleet was being torn apart by ships that should have posed no threat. "Commander, incoming transmission from the human forces," his communications officer reported. Vextal activated the channel and found himself looking at Colonel Peters, broadcasting from the planet's surface. The human's expression was calm but determined. "Council Commander, this is Colonel Sam Peters of the Human Defense Force. Your fleet is defeated. Surrender now and your surviving crews will be treated according to the laws of war." The idea of surrendering to a primitive species was so alien to Vextal that he almost couldn't process it. The Council had never surrendered to anyone. They were the ultimate authority in the galaxy. "You cannot defeat the Council," Vextal said, though his words sounded hollow even to himself. "We will send more ships. We will send the entire fleet, if necessary." Peters nodded. "We're counting on it. Every ship you send will be destroyed, just like this one. The galaxy needs to understand that humanity doesn't bow to threats." The transmission ended as human ships closed in on Vextal's flagship. From all directions, his weapons were offline, his shields were gone, and his crew was preparing for the final assault. But instead of destroying the flagship, the human ships stopped just outside weapons range. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the communications channel. "Council Commander, you have one chance to survive. Take your remaining ships and return to your masters. Tell them exactly what happened here. Tell them that humanity fights back." Vextal couldn't believe what he was hearing. The humans were letting him escape, but not out of mercy. They wanted him to deliver a message. As the battered remnants of the Council fleet limped away from Kepler 442, Vextal understood that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. For 50,000 years, the Council's authority had been absolute. Species submitted or were destroyed. There was no third option. But humanity had created a third option. They had fought back and won, proving that the Council was not invincible. Word of this battle would spread throughout the galaxy, reaching every species that had ever chafed under Council rule. Colonel Peters watched the Council ships retreat, knowing that this victory was just the beginning. The Council would return, with more ships and greater force. But humanity had proven something important to themselves and to the galaxy. "Major, begin Phase 2 preparations," Sam ordered. "If they want a war, we'll give them a war they'll never forget." The Battle of Kepler 442 became the spark that would ignite rebellion throughout the galaxy. President Helen Carter stood in the emergency session of the United Earth Council, facing representatives from every major nation and colony. The holographic displays around the chamber showed the alien message playing on repeat, each viewing, making the ultimatum seem more surreal and threatening. "The question before us is simple," Carter said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Do we submit to this Galactic Council's demands, or do we chart our own course?" Senator Bill Crawford from the Mars colonies was the first to respond. "Madam President, we've seen what they do to species that don't comply. An entire civilization wiped from existence. How can we even consider defying them?" General Marcus Stone, head of Earth's military forces, stepped forward. "With respect, Senator, how can we consider surrendering our freedom without a fight? These aliens are treating us like children who need permission to grow up." Dr. Amanda Foster, humanity's leading weapons researcher, activated a display showing their current military capabilities. The Council's message mentioned quantum weaponry and AI consciousness as forbidden technologies. These aren't random restrictions. They're specifically targeting the areas where humanity has the greatest potential for breakthrough development. Carter nodded toward Amanda. "Explain what you mean, Doctor." "Our quantum research has been progressing faster than anyone predicted," Amanda said, highlighting several projects on the display. "We're on the verge of developments that could revolutionize space travel, energy production, and defense systems. They want us to stop precisely because we're getting close to something significant." Commander Tony Blake, head of military intelligence, had been studying the alien transmission's technical aspects. "There's something else we need to consider. The way they delivered this message shows they've been watching us for some time. They know exactly what technologies we're developing and how far we've progressed." This revelation sent murmurs of concern through the chamber. The idea that aliens had been observing humanity without their knowledge was disturbing to everyone. Present General Stone brought up tactical considerations. "If they've been watching us, they probably think they know how we'll respond. Most species likely submit immediately when faced with this kind of threat." "But we're not most species," Carter said firmly. "The question is, what makes us different, and can we use that difference to our advantage?" Engineer Kate Sullivan from the Luna shipyards had been reviewing the technical data from the alien transmission. "Madam President, I've been analyzing the signal patterns and energy signatures. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it follows very predictable patterns. Everything about their approach suggests they rely heavily on standardized, conventional methods." Carter leaned forward with interest. "What does that mean in practical terms?" "It means they've grown comfortable," Kate explained. "When you've been the dominant power for 50,000 years, you stop innovating. You stop expecting surprises. Their entire message assumes we'll react the same way every other species has reacted." Dr. Foster pulled up humanity's military production data. "We have advantages they probably don't know about. Our manufacturing is decentralized, our population is spread across multiple worlds, and our military doctrine emphasizes adaptability over rigid hierarchy." General Stone added his perspective. "More importantly, our entire military philosophy is based on fighting opponents with superior firepower. We've been preparing for asymmetric warfare since we started expanding into space." President Carter looked around the chamber at the faces of humanity's leaders. She could see fear, but she could also see determination and defiance. These were the descendants of people who had survived world wars, colonized hostile worlds, and never stopped pushing boundaries despite countless setbacks. "I'm authorizing Project Prometheus," Carter announced. We're going to prepare for the possibility that diplomacy won't work. General Stone, I want you to coordinate with Dr. Foster and all colonial governments to begin immediate defensive preparations. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives began working out the details. Carter noticed that nobody argued against the decision. Even those who had initially favored compliance seemed energized by the prospect of standing up to the alien ultimatum. Over the following months, humanity transformed with remarkable speed. Every civilian ship was evaluated for potential military conversion. Mining operations were expanded to produce materials for weapons and defensive systems. Research facilities hidden in asteroid belts began working around the clock on the technologies the Council had forbidden. Captain Danny Rodriguez was leading one of the most important missions during this preparation period. His ship, the explorer vessel New Horizons, was conducting covert reconnaissance beyond human space, trying to gather intelligence on Council forces and technology. Captain, we're picking up something on long-range sensors, reported his science officer, Lieutenant Mike Davis. It looks like a patrol fleet, 3 ships running standard search patterns. Danny studied the tactical display. The alien ships moved in perfect formation, following predictable routes that any military academy student could anticipate. Are they scanning for us? Negative, sir. Their sensors are active, but they're using broad-spectrum sweeps. Very thorough, but easy to avoid if you know the pattern. This was exactly the kind of information humanity needed. The Council forces were powerful but predictable, relying on overwhelming superiority rather than tactical innovation. Meanwhile, back at Luna Station, Admiral Jake Morrison was coordinating the defense preparations. Captain Lisa Hayes had returned from another deep space mission with more disturbing discoveries. Admiral, we found 3 more dead civilizations, Lisa reported grimly. All show the same pattern of orbital bombardment, complete sterilization, and systematic destruction of cultural sites. Jake studied the tactical reports. Any indication of how they defended themselves? That's the interesting part, sir. From the debris patterns and defensive structures we found, it looks like they all fought conventional battles, fleet against fleet, following standard military doctrine. Jake nodded thoughtfully. And they all lost. Yes, sir. But they fought, the way the Council expected them to fight. They tried to match superior firepower with inferior resources. This was the key insight that shaped humanity's defensive strategy. Every previous species had tried to fight the Council on the Council's terms using the Council's rules. Humanity would have to do something completely different. Dr. Foster's research teams made breakthrough after breakthrough in the forbidden technologies. Their quantum disruption weapons could potentially neutralize the Council's energy shields. Their AI systems provided tactical advantages no organic mind could match. Their dimensional manipulation research opened possibilities for mobility and defense that the Council had probably never encountered. Engineer Kate Sullivan's shipyards produced vessels unlike anything in the galaxy. Instead of the massive, heavily armed battleships that dominated conventional space warfare, humanity built small, fast ships designed for hit-and-run attacks. They developed stealth technology based on human submarine warfare principles. They created weapons that could be disguised as civilian equipment or hidden in seemingly empty space. General Stone established training programs that emphasized the lessons of human military history. Guerrilla warfare tactics from Earth's conflicts were adapted for space combat. The principle of asymmetric warfare became central to every defensive plan. As the deadline approached, Captain Ryan Davis was commanding a converted mining vessel, on patrol near the edge of human space when the first Council ships arrived. His vessel, the Iron Will, had been retrofitted with Dr. Foster's experimental weapons, but still looked like a civilian freighter. "Captain, we have 3 Council vessels approaching," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. "They're broadcasting a message demanding our surrender and inspection." Ryan looked at his crew. They were miners, engineers, and colonists who had volunteered to defend their homes. None of them were professional soldiers, but all of them understood what was at stake. "Broadcast our response," Ryan ordered. "Tell them that humanity doesn't surrender." The Council ships moved into attack formation, clearly expecting the human vessel to either flee or comply. They had no way of knowing that the Iron Will represented something new in galactic warfare, a species that refused to accept limitations imposed by others. What happened next would become legend throughout human space. The Iron Will, using improvised tactics and experimental weapons, managed to disable one Council destroyer and damage another before disappearing into an asteroid field. The surviving Council ship retreated, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic order. For the first time in 50,000 years, someone had fought back and won. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching the massive holographic display that showed the outer edges of human space. The blue dots represented Earth's colonies, scattered across 12 star systems like tiny islands in an ocean of darkness. Only 6 months ago, humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel, and already they had spread further than anyone thought possible. The communication array suddenly came alive with an incoming signal unlike anything they had ever received. The transmission carried data patterns that made their best computers struggle to decode. Jake watched as his communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Parker, worked frantically at her console. "Admiral, this signal is coming from beyond our mapped space," Amy said, her voice tight with concentration. "The origin point is over 200 light-years away, but the signal strength suggests massive power behind it." Jake nodded and moved closer to the main screen. "Can you decode it?" "Working. On it now, sir. The language patterns are completely alien, but there seems to be some kind of universal translation protocol embedded in the transmission." Minutes passed in tense silence as the computers worked to make sense of the alien message. Finally, the speakers crackled to life with a voice that sounded artificial yet somehow ancient. "Greetings. Species of the 3rd planet orbiting the star you call Sol. I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Veltar Confederation, speaking for the Galactic Council. You have recently achieved faster-than-light travel and have begun expanding beyond your home system. This message serves as both welcome and warning." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. First contact with an alien species was something humanity had dreamed about for centuries, but this formal tone suggested something far more serious than a friendly hello. The voice continued. "The Galactic Council has governed known space for over 50,000 of your years. We are a coalition of 12 advanced civilizations that maintains order and peace throughout the galaxy. All spacefaring species must follow our protocols to ensure stability and prevent conflicts that could destroy entire worlds." A holographic image materialized above the main display, showing a vast three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of star systems were marked in different colors, representing various alien civilizations. Jake could see that human space was nothing more than a tiny speck on the edge of this vast cosmic empire. "Your species has been allocated 3 star systems for expansion," the ambassador's voice explained. "These boundaries are non-negotiable and have been selected to prevent interference with established civilizations. You must halt all expansion beyond these designated areas immediately." Jake's jaw tightened as he listened. The idea that some alien council could simply limit humanity's growth struck him as fundamentally wrong, but he remained silent as the message continued. Furthermore, your species must surrender all research into quantum weaponry, artificial intelligence consciousness, and dimensional manipulation technologies. These fields of study are restricted to prevent the development of weapons or systems that could threaten galactic stability. Our enforcement fleets will arrive within 1 of your years to collect all research materials and ensure compliance. The holographic map zoomed in to show the 3-star systems humanity was being allowed to keep. Jake recognized 2 of them as colonies they had already established, but the 3rd was an empty system with no habitable worlds. Failure to comply with these directives will result in immediate and total sanctions against your species. The Council has dealt with non-compliant civilizations before, and the results are always the same. We strongly advise cooperation for the sake of your species' survival. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Jake stared at the holographic map, his mind racing as he processed what they had just heard. Humanity was being treated like children who had wandered too far from home and needed to be brought back in line. Lieutenant Colonel Lisa Hayes entered the command center just as the transmission ended. She had been leading humanity's deepest exploration missions and had just returned from a survey of the outer colonies. "Admiral, did I just hear what I think I heard?" Lisa asked, her expression grim. Jake nodded. "It seems we're not alone in the galaxy, and our new neighbors have some very specific ideas about how we should behave." Lisa moved to the tactical display and began pulling up data from her recent missions. "Sir, I need to show you something. During our survey of the Kepler 438 system, we found evidence of a previous civilization. The planetary scans showed massive cities, advanced technology, and a population that should have numbered in the billions." She activated a series of images showing ruined cities from orbit. The destruction was complete, with no signs of life anywhere on the planet's surface. "What happened to them?" Jake asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "The radiation signatures suggest orbital bombardment with antimatter weapons. The entire planet was sterilized approximately 50 years ago. But here's the interesting part," Lisa continued, highlighting specific areas on the planet's surface. "These weren't military targets. They hit population centers, universities, research facilities, and cultural sites. This wasn't a war, sir. This was extermination." Jake studied the images with growing unease. The destruction was methodical and complete, designed to eliminate not just the population but any trace of their civilization and knowledge. "Did you find any records of what they might have done to deserve this?" he asked. Lisa shook her head. "Nothing concrete, but our xenoarchaeology team found fragments of what appears to be communication logs. From what we could translate, it seems they were developing new propulsion technology and had begun expanding beyond their designated territory." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. The ruins they were looking at might be humanity's future if they refused to comply with the Council's demands. "Admiral," Amy called from her station, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from our outer colonies. They're all reporting the same message we just received." Jake nodded grimly. The Council wasn't taking any chances. They wanted to make sure every human in space knew exactly what was expected of them. "Get me a secure channel to Earth," Jake ordered. "President Carter needs to know about this immediately." As the communications team worked to establish the connection, Jake continued studying the galactic map. The scale of what they were facing was almost incomprehensible. Humanity had barely taken its first steps into space, and already they were being told where they could and couldn't go by civilizations that had ruled the galaxy since before human civilization began, but something about the Council's message bothered him. The tone was arrogant, almost bored, as if they had delivered the same ultimatum countless times before. They seemed to expect immediate compliance without question, as if the idea that a species might refuse had never occurred. To them, Jake thought about humanity's history, about all the times they had been told something was impossible, or that they had to accept limitations imposed by others. Humanity's greatest achievements had always come from refusing to accept those limitations. "Admiral, I have President Carter on the secure channel," Amy reported. Jake activated the communication link, and Helen Carter's image appeared on the main screen. The president looked tired but alert, clearly having been awakened by the urgent nature of the call. "Jake, I assume. This is about the alien transmission we just received," she said without preamble. "Yes, ma'am. We've also discovered evidence that the Council has destroyed entire civilizations for non-compliance. This isn't a negotiation. It's an ultimatum." President Carter was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. "What's your assessment of the situation?" Jake looked around the command center at his officers, all of whom were listening intently. "Ma'am, I think we need to ask ourselves a fundamental question. Who gave them the right to govern the galaxy?